You did?
Whatever.
Greetings.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. You're awesome.
So I have my certificate of nomination. If any of you all would like the first opportunity to sign my
I'm
name
gonna,
for re-election.
can I think about that a bit?
No,
Okay.
if you have to think about it, you can't.
I'll sign it, but I want to be the last person to pay. So just put my name.
Sign at the bottom.
It's not.
No, it was actually in behind it. It was that.
Yeah. You sign wherever you want. Don't sign it. I'm not offended.
Yes. How are you doing?
That's it? Yeah. And thank you.
Oh, you're gonna go first.
Sign until this. Take over. I'm assuming that we need to get signatures. Starting now.
That is so smart.
They're probably failing out fast, aren't they now?
Yeah, it's a little eerie on campus.
Have a lot of the students gone home?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently, what's the stuff? Because we have 2 traffic people doing, they can't make delivery for Georgia. I thought they were on Christmas, are they on the calendar now?
Who is it?
Well. Oh, they can't pay for them for that? No, I don't think it has anything to do with paying for them. I think it's staff there.
Thank you, Nick.
I think the guys were kicked out there. No.
Pastor or Dan, either of you want to sign or not sign? You don't have to.
Esther just whispered to me she wasn't gonna sign.
Okay.
That's exactly what I said. Yeah, quite the opposite.
Me too.
I gotta make some time to get out to my neighbors. Get my paperwork in.
You go.
Oh, I have to go out the back of
Pretty
it.
cute.
Oh, thanks.
She's got a smile, man.
Which will just be here before I know it, so. I'm just trying to get ahead and watch me the day before we go everywhere trying to get my signature.
Oh, good, good, thank you. So that is Jim from MCTV, and he's gonna be working remotely. He is on the job though.
All
We just reported.
Thank you both.
Yep.
Thank you, everyone.
Good luck.
Yeah.
I'll be happy to sign it.
Oh, that'd be fabulous.
I sign everybody's papers.
Thank you. I haven't filled out that, but I'm obviously
I
gonna
love
stay
it when
and
people run.
run for, running for re-election, so. Gee, Shar, are you Middlebury resident?
I'm not, yeah.
Yeah.
Want me to sign it?
I would love for you to sign it, but
I would love to sign it.
it would,
He's the chief Middlebury.
then I have to
firefighter.
get an extra piece of paper for extra signatures. It used to be before COVID, there would be a whole room full and you could go around the room and get half your signatures.
Maybe just go across the street and get probably what you're saying.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
See for odds, not joining us. My goodness, let's see it in person.
I did what?
You're in person.
I'm here. I'm here. Everyone at my house is well and functioning, and it's very nice.
Becca got her second vaccine Saturday. I got boosted on Saturday. And so Christmas Day, we are officially.
Woohoo!
All together. So, all good. Merry Christmas to us.
Yeah. It is 7 o'clock.
Recording in progress.
Record my comments. I'm going to start our select board meeting of Tuesday, December 14th to order. And the first item is approval of the agenda.
Second.
Moved and seconded. We do have some changes. We have an addition, item 6A, requesting Purpose Energy for a letter of support for its application to the Agency of Commerce and Community Development for a capital investment program grant. And item 6B, a request from Dan Ford Pewter for an ACCD capital investment program grant, letter of support. And a deletion of item 12, Lisa Rubin of Ozzie Road, East Middlebury, request for the town support on funding the traffic calming measures. It's been deferred because they're going to put together a more complete request. And agenda deletion of item number 13, the town college lunch was canceled because the timing was coincidental with the college's breakout of positives in the student body, and they needed to focus on that. So we removed that to try to get that rescheduled in January. Are there anything else that anybody would like to change on the agenda? Okay. Hearing none. All those who would like to approve the agenda with the additions and deletions as stated, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay. Next is approval of the consent agenda.
So moved. Holy moly. So moved.
Second.
Two and a half.
Holy moly, second.
Oh, you seconded it? So,
Two and a half
I
pages.
would like to call attention to a lot of stuff in it. I hope, so the consent agenda is not intended to be just an easy way to forget things. There are things in here that are pretty meaningful. I hope everybody's reading the minutes of the Owsley Library renovation expansion working group. The ILO, what is the name? ILO
100.
100.
Oh,
IPL 100 pack. So you guys can be reading about your IPL 100 pack, and but just to kind of get thinking about it and whatnot. They're going to be bringing once we get to all of our budgeting, everything will be coming back in front of us to give us an update where they're at. You note that we have the renewal of the Middlebury Tree City USA status. A thank you letter for the American Legion Post 27 for New Year's Eve fireworks. That's $5,000. Again, American Legion does a lot of stuff for our community. They're kind of unsung heroes. They don't ask for a lot other than the community to get out there and do some stuff. And they're always supporting youth activities. And this is a great thing for our community. The flood resiliency project, I believe, was 99% done, and it's on winter hold now. It'll get done in the spring. A renewal of the ASCD for the rec park, the lease with ASCD, the rec park is hopefully going to be to us at the next meeting, or 2 meetings from now. Next meeting. And then there's a big report here from Kathleen, and especially of note is the draft revisions for the town purchasing policy. We talked about this previously, and the need to update it so that we weren't spending a lot of time on routine purchases. And today, a $3,000 filter or something like that is unfortunately a routine purchase. And so, 30-year-old policy is in need of updating, and they've done a really nice job. Take a look at that, think about it, it'll come back to us for approval after it gets finished going through committees. Okay?
Can I just make one comment?
Absolutely.
I just appreciate that being there and having a little time to think about it, given the amount of stuff and the rest of the packet this time. So I have to be honest, I haven't gone through it all yet, but I have a little bit of time. So. It's a lot, like, this was a huge packet and
Yeah.
busy time of year. Anyway,
This is packet.
That's the back.
I don't want to know.
Oh, that took me all day.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve a consent agenda. I just wanted to bring all that to your attention and make sure everybody's in on it, but also those who are out in the listening audience knows some of the stuff that can go in and dig and look at our packet. They're interested in any of the above. So all who are in favor of approving the consent agenda as presented, signify by saying aye. Aye.
I wasn't there for the last meeting. For the minutes, for the minutes.
Okay, so all except for the minutes.
Yes.
Okay, and aye. So we have one partial abstention. Next is citizen comments. Is there anybody here for something that's not on the agenda? Come right forward and
Right up here.
Yeah.
You get the hot seat.
I get the hot seat. So our camera is right here, Ann, and one of these owls. So I'm talking to that, and the microphone is there as well.
Terrific. And hopefully it'll be clear through my net. First, I wanted to thank you all for the work that you do, because you are seeing all the matters in town that need to be addressed, and you're learning about them and making decisions for all of us. And I just appreciate that. I wanted to just give you a heads up and let you know that some of the neighbors of the airport have learned that there's a new master plan being developed by V-Trans for development of the airport. And I wanted to urge you, in whatever role you get to take with that, to look carefully at both sides, because now V-Trans is strong and powerful, and it goes forward, does great things for us. However, there are several hundred residences in close proximity of the airport that will be very much affected by new things that are put in there, such as lights or beacon. So I'm hearing in the community lots of opinions, and I'm not in a position to say who's right or wrong, but I just urge you, in the sake of really good communication, to closely look at the needs of the townspeople as well as the infrastructure.
Okay.
And then, since I'm here talking with you, I gather you know a little bit about this already. We're very thankful that the group in East Middlebury was able to have Tom Hannon's support and Kathleen's support in changing the speed limit. And the speed limit has been dropped. We've seen some really nice results from that. And and we also still have some concerns. And Chief Hanley had said, that the police patrolling is not enough of a tool to keep traffic to the speed limit, and that we need to install some traffic calming measures. So I wanted to let you know that there's a group in East Middlebury that has now woken up again and is working on those traffic calming measures, as you gathered from the Lisa Rubin's agenda item that got postponed.
Okay. And we'll look to get that at a future meeting when you're prepared.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is liquor.
Oh, we have someone in our audience, Judy Weigert Rose, who would like to.
Okay. Judy, are you there?
Okay, we seem to have lost Judy, and I'll keep an eye out for you, Judy.
Okay, then we'll move on to liquor license applications. And Town Clerk Ann Webster is requesting the board's approval for off-cycle liquor license applications
She's back. Go ahead.
in 5A and 5B. First is Ale's Family Restaurant, which was formerly the Schaefer's Market and Deli. And they're applying for first-time, first-class sale of beer and wine only for on-premise consumption, and second-class sale of beer and wine only for off-premise consumption. And the required public safety inspections have been completed. Questions?
I was just gonna point out their address is wrong in our agenda. It's right on the actual permit application. It's called. Oh, no, somebody changed it already. Never mind.
Never mind.
It had said Creek Road before.
Oh, yeah, we don't have a restaurant on Creek Road yet.
Not yet. We only have a road, right?
So pleasure of the board?
Well, there's no reason to move against it, so I move to approve the first and second class liquor license application for Ale's Family Restaurant LLC.
Second?
Seconded. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Next is Vermont Hard Cider, 1321 Exchange Street, request for approval of third-class liquor license. Vermont Hard Cider Company is applying for a third-class license to sell spirits for on-premise consumption for its location at 1321 Exchange Street as a result of a change in ownership. And Webster reports that the new owners had applied earlier this year for a seasonal half-year license, which expires at the end of December. The new license application bridges the gap between January and the start of the new license year on May 1st, 2022. It's pretty cut and dried.
Yeah. So once again, I see no reason to deny this, so I move to approve the third class liquor license application for Vermont Hard Cider Company LLC.
Second?
It's been seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Back to Judy. Judy, are you with us?
Judy, you're on mute.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now? Oh, okay, all right. I feel like a Verizon commercial. So, two things. One, I would like to echo Ann's concerns about what we have recently found out about changes at the Middlebury Airport. Lighting was one of the things we were told years ago would not happen at the airport. You probably know that if you look at Middlebury at night, it glows with all the lighting. East Middlebury at the same time is dark. And that makes a big difference to a lot of species. So including those of us who enjoy watching the night sky. So that's one comment. The other is, so on the agenda is approval Tree City USA, our Tree City USA recertification application. Do you need anything from me, or are you approving?
Judy, we approved that and we're signing off on it right now. It's just actually passing around, so you'll have to be happy to have that, so.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much. If I could add just a couple things quickly. The tree committee applied for and received 3 grants, bringing in $20,000 to add to and maintain Middlebury's urban tree canopy. During the past year, we have planted 38 new trees in the town of Middlebury, and a number of those were planted along the path to the teen center. And we have assistance from volunteers from the teen center, along with help from Lindsay and Esther. Yay! And lastly, we received so we have to be able to show that we have sufficient funds for our community, and we received $11,500 through municipal town funding, which is awesome. And we also gained over $12,000 from volunteer hours. So we're like this little committee. We're little, but we're mighty. Just wanted you to know.
Okay, I appreciate that. You little committee, but doing big things, and it's noticeable. Thank you for your energy, and thank the rest of the committee for us.
I will. Thanks so much for your time and your approval.
You're welcome, Judy. Okay, next is we're going to go to request Energy for a letter of support for its application to the Agency of Commerce and Community Development for a capital investment program grant, the Middlebury Resource Recovery Center program on Industrial Avenue. Are there any questions on that, on their request? I'm ready for a motion. If you guys are ready.
I'll move to sign the letter of support for Purpose Energy's capital investment program grant application with the Agency of Commerce and Community Development for the Middlebury Resource Recovery Center project.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Okay, is there any final questions or comments? All right. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, next is another letter of support, this time for Danforth Computer. This came in late today, so you may not have read it. They're looking to purchase the Adams building, which is attached to the Danforth Computer office building. It's the only part of that complex that they don't own. They are going to build a connector between the two. They're going to renovate the north half of the Adams building and then expand Danforth Computer's production floor space and give them more room to space their production and to put a laser engraver in so they can add graphics to their products. Some of the benefits, creating both more demand, give them the ability to fill more demand. It'll add that, something unique about the laser engraver. Their fulfillment center is designed to handle the expected growth for years into the future. And they said because of their growth, they'll support 70 more Vermont vendors, including Maple Landmark, New England Air, a bunch of the different vendors that they said. So, and the additional benefit, they said, is they're going to make the property more valuable so that everybody gets more tax money. So,
All right, approval.
are there any questions on it? It's a letter of support, and, you know, I think it's a local business, and I don't see why we wouldn't give them a letter of support.
I'll move to sign the letter of support for Danforth Computer's Capital Investment Program grant application with the Agency of Commerce and Community Development.
All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay. Kathleen, I'll turn it over to you for our general budget draft.
Okay, thank you. I just want to start with an overview of where we are in the process. Victoria was in on Friday afternoon, or actually Monday afternoon, and asked me, where are we? So this is going to be our first look at the budget. We meet again on December 28th, at which time there's further review and you set a public hearing date for this budget, which will be on January 11th this year. So then you take public comment on the budget and finalize it up at your next meeting for January 25th, at which time the board votes to warn the budget for town meeting. Okay. We have
That's our regular meeting, right?
and those are both regular meetings. And from time to time, the board has felt the need to have additional meetings in January. If additional budget review is required. Overview. Before we have our department heads go over their particular line items, just like to know where this first budget places us. We're looking at a increase from $11.5 million to $12 million, $500,000 or 4.3% overall. There are not a lot of new non-tax revenues coming in way. So the majority of that, $486,000, would be coming from tax revenue in this budget. And that would translate into about a 5-cent increase on the tax rate. As always, we'll be looking for other sources of revenue, looking to our fund balance once the audit is complete. We know that we finished last year in the black, so we should have fund balance to tap. This budget contains fund balance in the amount that we used last year, so level funding on the fund balance. It also level funds the amount of the local option tax. We know from our latest quarterly report that those receipts have been robust, and we may be able to bump that a little bit to offset our capital improvement expense. So with that, I will continue on to our major drivers. We have wages at $160,000 going up. We have wages of about $3.8 million annually. Employment benefits also going up $54,000 or 3.5%, $1.5 million or so on employment benefits. Capital improvements, hefty increase here of $137,000. We have learned since the infrastructure committee approved this budget that there will be some reductions. We've received a grant, a municipal planning grant for the bike and pedestrian plan that was included in the capital budget, so we'll be able to reduce that slightly. And there are a couple of other small tweaks. So we'll be looking at probably a $35,000 or $40,000 decrease to that, but we'll be taking that to the infrastructure committee in January for their consideration. Equipment fund replacement, as you may recall, we shifted a significant piece of equipment forward last year, not knowing how far we were going to be falling into the abyss for the budget and to hold the bottom line. That is reflected here. We will be looking to see if there's something we can do with the timing of the payment for these vehicles that might help us reduce that slightly, such as spreading the payment for one of the larger pieces over 2 years. That's what I'm talking about with that. And we wouldn't have to borrow. We have the cash to do that, but that would take an authorization from town meeting, I think, to spread the payment over 2 years.
Victoria, you'd like to hear that, wouldn't you?
In the replacement fund, there's also the payment for 2 cruisers. It's a 2 cruiser year. And so that's part of it. So that's, this is the pie chart on that. I tweaked where I could the font to increase that by popular demand. But this is where it stands right now. General fund revenue, you see that property taxes is the biggest slice of our pie in our budget. And then just a quick summary of capital improvement expenses. So. So I am first up with the highlights from the general fund administration budget. And that is page 3, page 5 of your budget handout.
I appreciate the page numbers on this stuff. In addition to the line numbers. I don't think so. And depending on what version you were looking at, things were on different pages. We had the line numbers.
Yeah,
But this is what
we
I don't
have,
think we had it.
we used to let all of the departments present their own budget without the consistent line items in that way. So in the general fund administration, the overview includes $13,000 or 1.8% of our wages in the general fund expenses as an increase. We are also adding in the town manager's office $10,000 to the budget to cover meeting minutes for the select board and other departments. And that will let us free up our existing staff to focus on other work besides meeting minutes, which are quite time consuming. A hefty increase also in the town manager's contractual services from $8,500 to $20,000, an increase of $11,500. This includes funding for the remainder of the diversity, equity, and inclusion contract and funding for recruiting for anticipated retirements and other human resources consulting. There was also a small increase of $876 in the Vermont League of Cities and Towns membership dues, which is in the town manager's budget. Building maintenance is increased $3,500 or 5.8% to reflect some routine HVAC work. And there is a $6,000 increase in the elections line item to reflect the biennial election taking place in November. I'll also cover briefly at the end of your budget. Starting at page 26 on debt retirement. As the bonds are paid off, interest payments decrease over time, and the most significant decrease being in the Cross Street Bridge debt service. You also see that the PD reuse project interest payment is reflected there, as well as the flood resiliency project interest. We will be applying to the bond bank in December, later this month, or to issue the bonds for those projects, as well as the solar bond. Employee benefits increase, inflationary increase in Social Security, retirement increased, medical insurance. We're not anticipating a huge increase in this. But since the fiscal year also includes January 2023, who knows what that will bring as far as inflationary increases in medical insurance. I've anticipated a 10% increase in the budget for that year. We actually have the actual numbers for 2022 in hand, and those are reflected in the budget. And that is the end of my sections. Dana is here.
Kathleen, does that have all of the necessary funding for your plan, long-term planning for transition of the office staff and stuff that's in this budget?
Right, we don't have, we're still working on a plan for a public works succession.
Yeah.
Right in the middle of that right now, so there may be an addition for some overlap.
Don't worry, I'm years away from retiring, so you don't have to worry.
That's correct, because we're gonna reproduce the rest.
How's the baby doing?
Oh, she's so cute. Thank you for asking. She's really good. She's 9 months.
9 months already.
Yeah, really fast. So
Did
she's
you call the
crawling.
Christmas tree yet?
We don't have one for that very year.
Oh, no, that's an incentive for her to walk.
We haven't gotten a baby playpen for her yet. She still has free reign because she just started crawling. So we've got to get that set up before we get the tree.
She could walk it.
Oh my gosh, I know, it's crazy.
Dana's budget, library
Yeah.
operating budget starts on page 9.
Yes, so I think everyone knows we've been open for our full hours since July 1st. And I'm anticipating that we'll be open for all of fiscal year 23. So the budget reflects that. Our biggest budget driver is personnel costs, contractual step increases, and anticipated cost of living is our big number again. That's about $26,000 this year. I'm also requesting $16,000 to cover existing part-time regular staffing. We realized last year that we've been requesting too little for the 6 part-time regular staff that we have. Every year that I've been here, we've been a little over in that budget line, but something has always happened to kind of compensate for it. Someone's been out on disability or we've had an open position. And so everything is sort of worked out. And then this year I actually went through and multiplied the hours by the rates and realized that we had been underfunded. So that will allow us to not rely on people being out due to illness or maternity or retirement to make sure we're on budget. And I can answer more questions about that if you have them. The other big item for us is our internet service. For many years, Middlebury College has provided our internet service. And this year they let us know that for security reasons, that agreement had to come to an end. So our internet service is now bundled with the town offices, which has worked out great for us, but it is a significant increase. It's $4,000 a year.
Is that why yours is, I noticed yours jumped too, is that the same deal that you're providing for the entire town?
We also, increased our bandwidth here.
Okay. Interesting.
Those are the increases. There's a lot of movement between the budget lines as always, but the collection spending zeroes out. That's level funded this year. I think we'll have a modest savings in our heating and electricity due to a slightly tighter building envelope. But just, I'm thinking maybe $1,000 over the course of the year. And then not included in this request is funding for library programs because the Friends of the Library provide that funding, but just so you know, it's about $13,000 annually. Questions about any of the budget lines or increases?
Looking at the Sarah Partridge library line items, did you just roll it all into yours or?
So
Page 11.
there's the part-time regular for Sarah Partridge and the East Middlebury supplies, right? It totals 14,000. Yeah, so it's the same amount it's always been.
Oh, you just rolled it into.
It used to be divided between 7,000 for Middlebury and 7,000 for East Middlebury, but that kind of reflects the revenue, I guess, but not the expenditure. So this reflects the 11,000 is what we spend on salary and the 3,500 is what we spend on materials.
So. Good. I think Joe presented last year, maybe the.
No, I'm just here to support, the library trustees always review this budget in advance, and vote to approve it. Which we did, I think in September, October. But just so you know, in terms of the buildings, the Sarah Partridge Library, responsibility for that building rests with the East Middlebury Prudential Committee. Whereas responsibility for this building represents, is borne by the town.
Okay. So I don't think we have any questions at this time then. Thank you.
Great, thanks everyone.
Thank you, Dana.
Thanks, Dana.
If I could interject one note, are you talking about capital budget at all? Or no?
I don't think we were, am I presenting on that tonight? I didn't think so. Okay.
Never mind.
Tom?
Good evening, everyone.
Hi, Tom.
Good evening, Chief.
Well, we've given you a budget that has a bottom line increase of 3.8%, but the largest part of that increase is in salary adjustments. But we're going into collective bargaining, so we really don't know what that is, and we kind of highballed the budget figure just to make sure we were covered. So we're not really sure exactly what that is going to be. Another increase in the budget is the equipment fund, and that's because it's funding a 2-year vehicle. Hybrids, if we go to them, they're going to be coming in a bit more than the regular sedans. So I think we're all committed to going with the hybrid vehicles. So we have to anticipate the increased cost and perhaps over time a offsetting cost and reduced fuel consumption. Other than that, the one new thing we're doing this year is looking at getting body-worn cameras. We're one of the last ones in the state to get those. The big problem for us was data management, and we've resolved that issue. So it's not going to be an issue for us anymore. So we'd like to move forward. This is a 5-year proposal where the company financed this over 5 years. So we got a fairly small number at $4,800 for full deployment of body cameras. Other than that, the other things are just some inflationary increases, service contracts and things like that. But no new programs and no new capital acquisitions or anything.
How's your staffing right now, Chief?
We're too short. It's been difficult. We're like everybody else in the state. We're finding recruits has been very, very difficult. We're looking at replacing one officer position with a dispatch position, which will reduce the cost of salaries, only because we simply can't find enough officers to staff, and one of them is always assigned to the evening dispatch anyway. We have no shortage of dispatch applicants, but we are really having a hard time finding full-time patrol officer applicants, at least quality ones anyway.
So you're running a lot of extra overtime?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's what happens when you're running with minimum staffing. Every time a guy is sick or goes on vacation, we have to fill that with overtime, and that's kind of killing us a little bit.
Yeah.
But we have to keep people on the road, and because it's been busy with a lot of interesting events going on in the past few years, especially with the increase in mental health calls and responding with the ambulance to a lot of things.
Yeah. Any questions or two? Just on our first brush, we don't have any other questions, Chief.
Good, I don't have any other answers.
We knew that. Well, my father always said he wasn't overweight, he was just too short, so hopefully you guys can find those two short ones.
Yeah, we're going into a different applicant pool right now, a more regional applicant pool. We've just started that, so hopefully that'll drum somebody up. But getting somebody from out of the area into the department has been incredibly difficult because there are openings all over New England. With this one company that we're dealing with, which doesn't cost us anything, by the way, there's over 100 departments listed on there all over New England. So it's how do you get somebody out of the area interested in relocating to Middlebury when there's very little housing stock for them?
Yeah, I was gonna comment, that's one of our that's the select board's push to figure out how we can contribute to the housing dilemma, because I don't know how you bring somebody in when you can't give them some place to live.
No, my daughter lost her housing because the building was sold and they wanted everybody out. Couldn't find another rental, so she's back with me. That's just the way it is.
Yeah. Oh. Okay. You playing anywhere for Christmas?
No, we're just taking a break for a little while. We'll be back at it this spring.
All right, Chief, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
I'll put you back in the audience. And Chief Shaw is here. Fire Department, which starts on page 14.
Evening, Chief.
So it brings you a budget with very, very little change, slight increase in transfer equipment fund and an increase in the telephone charges. And an overall budget increase of $2,300.
Any questions on that one?
I'm happy to let you down, to be honest with you.
Farhad, who is not here, did want to make a comment that he thought that not only should we support your hourly pay increase, but that we should be looking at moving it up further.
Yeah, it's a struggle to get new members. We've been kind of dodging the subject, but the subject is real. We've just had 2 members leave this year because one of them lost an apartment in town, couldn't find one affordable, had moved to Brandon. Another one moved to Oral because they couldn't afford the house that they were living in. So that's a struggle for us because one of our requirements requirements is you have to live in a town 10 years before you can leave the town and still be a member. So that's a difficult struggle for us. And then during the day, it's an even bigger struggle because we have people that are leaving jobs that are much higher in pay to help out the community. And we're not there for the money. Nobody is there for the money, but it's certainly a nice thank you from the town for their services. And so that's why I'm asking for the increase. We haven't looked at this increase in over 5 years. So I think it's time that we had an adjustment in that area. And then we're actively looking at recruitment and retention, and this could be a tool for that as well. And we got a great group, and I'd like to somehow try to keep them together as much as we can. Our call volume is ever increasing, so and our demand for our services are as well. The increase in hourly salary will not affect the budget. We have room within the salary budget because we're answering more calls with less people. So it shouldn't put our salary budget over by increasing the pay. We should be able to absorb that. The 5 or 7 year average I gave you will easily absorb that increase in pay.
I think this is something we need to be real serious about. Now I actually had the opportunity, as I have every year, with the exception of the COVID year, to spend the Christmas season dinner with the members of the fire department as the checks are issued. And I've said it before, I work with fire departments around the world. And this group is every bit as professional as any group I've ever dealt with. Their salary structure needs to get up to the level of professionalism they are. Listen to what they put in for training. Just taking care of the equipment because it's always ready to go. If a car doesn't start, that's inconvenient. If a fire truck doesn't start, that's potentially fatal. They're constantly on this thing. And it's a problem all across the country that we're kind of late in getting, but the ability to get volunteers, especially as calls go up, is more and more difficult. Because as Chief says, they're leaving jobs that are paying more, so they're actually taking a pay cut in the pay response. I know they don't do it for the money, but we need to appreciate the level of professionalism they are. Because here's what we're looking at in 10 years based on trends across the country. You know, many of the members are of an age that they're going to be aging out.
Easy on this one now.
We're not getting replacements at the same level. So that means we're going to be looking at having to put in some career fully paid crew members. That's the trend across the country. It's across Canada. It's the way it is. Take the police budget and double it. And so we need to do everything we can to try to draw in new and retain what we have, or it's going to become really problematic. So what we're spending now is going to be cheap down the road. So I would advocate for going right to 15 an hour now. And if we say, well, where do we pull that from? Well, I think Chief's already mentioned, we probably have the money to even go that point.
You do.
But if not, I can think of another source, which we bring at a later point. But we really got to be serious about this. We're asking a lot of these people to be high professionals.
And Brian, we have talked about regionalization again. It's come back up in our last county meeting about regionalization and starting that talk again without the fear of, the larger departments taking over the smaller departments. The trend of downward spiral of volunteers has really got this back on the front again. So we're here again with it. I pushed it 15 years ago and didn't go anywhere, but I'm certainly on that bandwagon now. It won't be a quick thing for sure, but at least the conversation is still there.
Can you explain what regionalization is?
Yeah, so the Dave Shaw view of regionalization would be large sector departments subsidized by smaller regional departments, but it would all belong to one county organization. And so it wouldn't matter if you lived in Cornwall or you lived in Middlebury. If you were stationed out of this particular station, you would respond to that area, or vice versa. Something similar to Prince George's County, Maryland. But there's a whole funding source that has to come into there, and that has to come through the side judges, and there's a lot of work. So it's a process that'll take a decade or more to even get to look like something.
But it happens in some of the places the Chief's mentioning, and I was just actually in the Loudoun County, Virginia project, and they've been experiencing this for years, and they actually have gone to the point where certain stations they're fully volunteer staffed, but they have enough of a pool from not just the immediate town, but from the region, that they actually sign up to be on duty on almost a shift. They're still volunteers, but they're getting some stipend for the time they're there. But you can count on an emergency vehicle rolling at once. And then what you'll have is it'll be supplemented by other more outlying stations where it may take time to get a crew in there. And that's helped to address a lot of staffing issues with the volunteers. And that's a nationwide trend.
I mean, certainly affordable housing is a key element for sure. I mean, people can afford to live in town, they can find the time to volunteer, so that's a key element as well. I don't know if you guys are tackling that, but it does come up in our interview process with members.
Is that a rule or a statute or anything as far as how long somebody has to be in the department before they can live outside of Middlebury?
It's in our bylaws, yes.
It's in your bylaws?
Yes.
Is that something you guys would entertain? Just, I mean, is it impacting you sufficiently enough that it's worth looking at that?
It's certainly a conversation we've had. We don't want to be competitive with other towns in the sense that we would take a member from another neighboring town that's starving for membership and they come to us because they're getting paid by the hour or they get a better compensation package.
Yeah.
So we're very cognizant of that. We don't want to be in competition with that. So we're really looking at this as being a recruitment and retention program for somebody that moves into town and wants to volunteer somewhere, and then the fire service is the ticket for them. Okay. I mean, you guys have all been very supportive of the fire service. We don't have questions there at all.
I would just comment on Nick's, and I thought the same thing that you mentioned about what far I hadn't remembered what it was in the past, and when I saw your memo, I was a little surprised at how low it was and that we hadn't changed it in 5 years. I was kind of thinking before I heard what Nick suggested, bumping it up to 14 if it would fit within the budget. And then I would like to see us consider doing something annually to continue to make sure that it's competitive and not let it go 5 years. Maybe if it's not annually, maybe at least every other year. So that we don't, I think it would be appropriate. Right.
Yeah.
I just think it would be appropriate,
Level that
especially
spike out, right?
given the current job market and, somebody searching what they could make,
I hear you. You're absolutely right.
So, anyway, I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but.
Kathleen, our process for doing a pay raise for that?
So why don't we, David, take a look at your budget and see what amount would be like $14 and $15?
Sure.
And take it from there. Maybe it's a two-step
Yeah,
plan.
This is the first brush, so I
Sure.
guess our comments on our first brush is we'd like to have you look at that with Kathleen and send it back to us with a pay step
Sounds good.
increase.
Sounds
So
good.
the number that's in there must be like $12 for 50 members, but we don't hit the 50 members, so we don't end up using it all.
It is kind of a tricky thing to get your arms around because we vary from call to
Yeah,
call, you know.
And the number of calls
Right, the
per
number of calls.
year.
But we could average the number of calls over a given year and average the number of volunteers over a number of years and come up with a rough average for sure. It won't be exact science, but it'll be as close as we can.
Well, we'll look forward to your revision.
Just one other note, we did go out and do the final truck inspection on the new engine out in South Dakota. South Dakota is a beautiful place in December. And it's near done. We did the final inspection. We left them with a laundry list of little tiny things that we need to have them take care of. And unfortunately, that puts it back into production, which puts it out another 30 to 45 days. So, but it's a big red truck and should take care of replace the old red truck that we've had a couple of offers on, one in Florida. And they were really serious about it until they found it didn't have air conditioning. And then a little tiny department in Maine, and the truck wouldn't fit in the station. So unfortunately, those are the only two real serious hits we've had. But we did lower the price, and we'll see what happens. But any knocking on Tom's door to try to find a place to put it in down at the old sewer treatment plant if we can't get rid of it before then. But
So, when you take delivery of that truck, would somebody fly out and do a final inspection?
no, we don't take delivery of it, legal delivery until they back it into the yard here on Seymour Street. I don't want any of that liability. So the dealer hires a company that'll drive it from South Dakota to Massachusetts to the dealer, and they'll do this dealer prep work there. Dealer will deliver it to us here, and then at that moment we'll change ownership there. Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. It's a long ride from South Dakota to Vermont at 60 miles an hour. So.
I'm sure. I was wondering how that works.
Light up the lights and stuff.
Yeah, well, you still only gotta go 65, that's as fast as you can go. As fast as you need to go.
Well, so you're saying it's gonna take a little longer to get it, let's be realistic, 25 years plus.
Oh, yeah, oh, absolutely. And with COVID, it is what it is. I mean, those guys are waiting, you should probably have singing to the choir. You can't get anything when you want it, so, yeah, it's crazy.
Well,
Thank
thank you.
you.
And Bill Turning is with us with the Public Works budget, starting on page 15.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Nice to see everybody again. So I like to kind of cut to the chase and then back in from there and review details and answer questions. So we have a fair increase this year, around 7.8%. It's mainly 3 drivers for that. One reason is I took a 3.5% decrease last year, basically due to operational issues associated with COVID. We just tightened our belt everywhere we could, so it's making it look a little bit worse. Also, like everybody else, we're seeing pressure on wages. And then the equipment fund is by far the biggest driver. And that's at least twofold. We do have a little bit of a heavy lift this year. We have a loader with a mower attachment that needs to be replaced, and then one of our plow trucks is up, and a couple service trucks also. And I think also because of COVID, we had put off a tax rate increase that we're having to make up that fund difference. I think that adds into this too. And then there's just a couple other smaller changes. Had a small increase in traffic lights and tree maintenance, and that's offset by decreases in stormwater and ditching. So that's the overview.
Bill, since we have you, why don't you run down the equipment what other equipment is planned for replacement this year?
Yeah, what's on the capital schedule is 2 highway pickups, a bale mulcher and associated sander that goes with one of the pickups, and then the loader with mower and a plow truck.
If we can get them.
Bill, why don't you give us an update on salt?
That's
Always like an update on salt.
I'm still looking to save money on salt this year, so we were sitting good at the beginning of the season, so. And our new spreader should, yeah, our new sidewalk spreader should stop dumping piles of it too, so.
Is that working good so far?
So far, yes.
I mean, it hasn't been out of the barn, probably.
Oh, no,
Yeah, they did one.
it's a couple times. I think.
Bill, it seems like we had some vehicles on order that were backed up, and we ended up doing some maintenance on others. Did those come in, or?
No, and that's the reality on some of the smaller vehicles. I'm not so sure on the plow truck, but even though they're in the budget and we try to order them, we may not see them in this upcoming budget year. So I've got 5 out on purchase right now. The one is going to be built some point in the first quarter. I don't know when. That's a plow truck. And then it'll have to go to a bodybuilder. I have one pickup truck that is sitting at a bodybuilder. They are waiting on parts. And then I have another one that the manufacturer has transferred from a 2021 to a 2022 model. They've held their discounts and their pricing for us. They have no idea when they will be able to build that. And I've got 2 other pickups that I can't get. They're telling me I can't have them. They can't meet the order. So.
Are there any questions for Bill on this?
Do we need to put a little bit more, do you think, in upkeep repair costs, knowing that some of these older trucks and equipment will be delayed a little bit? Do you think we have enough in there, or should we, maybe you don't have to answer that tonight. Maybe just think about that and decide whether that might be a revision for draft number 2. Is that fair?
That's fair. We can take a look at it.
I just, if you can't even get 2 trucks you're trying to order, and that means we do repairs on what we have existing, are we covered for that? I know it's incredibly hard to estimate what that should be up to where it should be at, but something to think
Yeah,
about.
it is. I mean, there's been years when we've almost doubled what we've set aside just because we've lost an engine or, some bigger piece that, you weren't counting on. So, and we are still continuing to see a fair amount of expense and issues with emissions, as they try to tighten that down. It's causing some repair issues and stuff that aren't under warranty and whatnot.
So maybe just look at that for round 2. I mean, unless anyone has any other suggestions.
No, it's probably reality. So what would that do to our purchases budget if they get pushed off? We're holding that money. If it goes
Yeah,
back against that year?
I would ask the board to hold that money at the end of the year.
You guys are getting off easy tonight, Bill.
Say what?
Oh, don't worry, we'll be back. You're not getting off easy, Bill. Okay, do you want to stay on while Dustin comes on with us for the record?
Yeah, I'll sit and listen.
Thanks, Bill. Hello, Dustin.
Sorry, I got cut off somehow. Before I get started with my budget, I just wanted to echo what Brian had said about thanking the American Legion. Pretty late in the game, we found out that the fireworks budget was pretty much double what we had usually. Sorry. There we go. So the fireworks company pretty much let us know that it was going to be double the budget of what we typically spend. And within, let's say, a week's time, Tom Scanlon had reached back out to me and said that the American Legion was willing to cover that entire cost. So really, without them, I don't think it would have been possible to have the fireworks. So we really appreciate that they did that and stepped up for us. So thank you for bringing that to the attention, Brian.
Dustin, that's a bold move to have that Red Sox banner in the background.
It's actually a very appropriate.
I think he might be trying to get at Chief Handley, but go ahead, Dustin.
All right, so for fiscal year 2023, we're projecting an expenditure budget of $493,602, which is a 4.3% increase from fiscal year 2022, or that's an increase of $20,476. Just to cover a few of the major drivers behind that, as previously mentioned by other.
Dustin, recreation starts on page 20. Go ahead, Dustin.
Yep, so touching on some major drivers, as other department heads had mentioned, cost of living wage increases for our full and part-time employees. That was a $9,800 increase. We also had a rise in our temporary seasonal wages due to a higher minimum wage and some step increases that are built in as they return year after year. And then we're also budgeting for an additional week of Camp Cucamonga. So all of that combined is a total of $15,000 additional dollars. And then also a rise in our heating, fuel, and electricity cost, which was a $12,000 increase. Part of that was due to, I guess it would be a clerical overlook that the electricity for this building was getting charged to the town office budget, so we were essentially freeloading off of them for the past couple of years. So that's just showing a correction. So those are the major drivers on the expenditure side. And then just quickly going over the revenue side, we're projecting a revenue budget of $252,850. And that represents a 5.3% increase. And so that's an additional $12,750. And the major drivers on that end are a $10,000 increase in the Camp Cucamonga revenue through that, creating that additional week. A $6,500 increase at the pool once we finally get those amazing amenities like the climbing wall put up. We're projecting higher daily admissions and robust seasonal pass sales. Our outdoor educational programming, as you can imagine with COVID, has really been popular, so we're projecting a $3,500 increase there. And then we've also created some great new programs, partnering with the Middlebury Community Center, or Music Center, and also an indoor and outdoor skateboarding clinic that has been held down in East Middlebury. And just started here in our gym with special skateboards that don't mark up our floors, which was fantastic. So I'm happy to take questions on either side of those.
So Dustin, when is the climbing wall going to be in?
It will be in for the start of the 2022 summer season. And hopefully a water slide as well.
Exciting.
But that's to be determined.
Really made a lot of nice improvements in the pool in the time I've been on before, and from when my kids were little to now. The pool really has been elevated, and I think in the use of it, people using it, and how nice it is too. So
I think the great thing about that, Heather, too, is that as all these improvements get done, our capital improvement budget is decreasing, which will be nice to kind of phase that out as we go on in the next couple of years. So.
Yeah, well, let's not phase it out. Let's make sure we keep a little in there to make sure we keep it up.
Oh yes, we're putting money in our reserve fund to make sure we can keep it up.
But on the good job on the top part, I think that, improvement there has really been nice too.
Thank you.
Comments from Dustin? Okay, thank you. Yeah.
All right, thank you guys. Have a great night.
Hold on. Dustin, at least from the information I've gotten, it looks like there's no capital improvement plan. It says a reduction, actually. What about the pickleball court and basketball court renovations that we were told would happen next year?
So Victoria, that's still slated for early to mid-spring. That's in our capital improvement plan, which is not a part of this budget. But that is all being funded through funds held on reserve, which is from previous years.
Would be fun, I'm sorry, what?
So,
Dustin, they have money held on reserve from previous years' capital improvement budgets that are gonna fund those improvements in this fiscal year, not next fiscal.
Okay, so that's why it's not on this sheet.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Dustin.
thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Good night.
Okay, before we move on to Jan, is there any other comments on the budget that you would like to have Kathleen work with department heads for our next meeting? I guess. Yeah. Okay,
At our next meeting, we'll be taking up the Health and Human Service agencies and retouching on the things that you asked me to follow up on, the fire department and the equipment fund maintenance. And hopefully a little update on other revenues to help us.
yeah, I got a couple I'm gonna hit you up on, so. Did you get the quarterly, you said you've already seen the third quarter results for
Right.
the fund?
For 2021, and it was our highest quarter ever. Well in excess of our 2019 quarter 3.
Wow.
It's great.
Just wondering, do you set a goal on, a cap on property tax increase and try and fit into that, or are you just wondering about the process of
Well,
your next coming steps?
I think in past years, we've heard everybody's results, and we talk about the implication of the tax rate and see if what we done it before or after, but I think if we can hear everybody what they're at, which just is coming out of a very interesting year, and there are some pretty sizable impacts on the budget that we'll have to figure out whether we take it out of some other area. We really don't have enough now, to be frank with you. That we will be having that discussion, yes. I know that's keen on your agenda. But we're at the early stages, so
Yeah,
it's the first time hearing it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we will not be, when it's all said and done, at a 5-cent increase. We'll keep it to 4 3/4.
I just didn't know you set a goal ahead of time to try and meet, or whether you just, it's just up and down as you go.
Yeah. We have in past years, but there's so many factors, I think, before I even say what the goal for me would be. I'd like to see everything.
Yeah.
And then figure out what's reasonable. Certainly, we have proven that we work hard to try to minimize the impact.
When was the last time we had a 5-cent increase, Kevin?
We haven't had a 1-cent increase.
Well, it was the firehouse, the year of the firehouse renovation was 5 cent. Since then, we've been.
So that probably
Pretty close.
I can't think of one in a decade.
Not since I was on the board.
No, you weren't there then.
And not that that had anything to do with it, I don't remember.
All right, I was.
I'm sure we will later.
All right.
I think one downside to trying really hard to keep it at no increase or as small as we possibly can is that at some point we just can't anymore. And the result is there's no more room to, excuse me, to flex. And I think we may be experiencing that a little this year. We've kept it so controlled that we're no longer have any cushion built in there. Excuse me, sorry.
Thank you, Heather, and to note, in the major drivers, we are upwards of $6 million for wages and benefits. That's half of our budget. And those increase year after year. And there is an employee, a competition for employees, and people have a lot of options. And so we have to remain competitive on that front.
Well, I think just one example of time I've been on this board is there was, I think, a strong effort to hold the tax line. And as a result, our public inventory suffered dramatically. I mean, I think since I've been here, we built a police station, we built 2 fire stations, we built this town office, we built the town rec op center. Not that we wanted to spend all that, we had no choice. You know, things were so deteriorated and such, and costing us so much. That it's like, in retrospect, it would have been better to spend more along the way, so we never got to that point. And now we're in good shape, but there, other points out, I mean, we're coming to a point where none of us want to see an increase, but we also want to make sure things work well. I think that's critical to what the mission of the town is.
I don't think we've necessarily skimped in recent years. So
No.
I think we've done what we need to do, but we've been fortunate enough to have other tools that we could utilize, as well as our tax base has grown. So, you know, that's one of the benefits of being pro-growth and trying to encourage businesses to relocate to Middlebury and people to make Middlebury their home. We'll see how it ends up.
I always say, jokingly say, it seems like every year Kathleen pulls a rabbit out of her hat. How many more rabbits in that hat?
Yeah.
Well, as Dana pointed out to me in this year's budget process, that's where I say the winter is coming. And I say that year after year, but winter is coming at some point.
I didn't mean to imply that we weren't skimping. What I meant by what I said was I think we've looked at each line item and adjusted it to where we're more close to actual numbers, so that there's not as much of a cushion, not as much ability anymore to adjust each line item up and down, yes. But I didn't mean to imply that, you know, we were skimping. We've just been very diligent and prudent, I think, with the budget, and the result is there's no more cushion to adjust in there, so.
Well, we've been absorbing cost of living increases at the expense of others, unless our revenues have to go up some way to compensate for that, instead of eating other programs.
Yep.
So let's go on to Dan. Dan? Good evening.
Okay.
Qualifications?
Yes, first item tonight is a statement of qualifications from Landmark Engineering. I'm requesting the board to approve it. This is a new company, but certainly not new people to us. It's been formed recently by Jamie Simpson, who was formerly with Green Mountain Engineering. Jamie has done numerous projects with us over the years, and I'll just whip off a few of them, but Rolling Acres Water Main, Butt Drive Water and Sewer, Stewart Lane Reconstruction, South Street Water Main and Forest Main, Chipman Park Water Main, Sanitary Street, Charles Avenue Project, and a few more. So he's done the majority of our infrastructure projects. So I'm sure as a function of COVID and wanting to work more closely to home, he decided to form a new engineering firm. So I asked him to submit his statement of qualifications, so it's on record, and that we can use his firm for, in this case, it'll be some small, it's a two-person firm, so it's small projects. We have a few of those that would fit well. They are right here in town, so it works out for us. So anyway, I'm requesting the board to approve their statement of qualifications, so it just puts them in the in the pile of engineering firms that we can select for projects that fit for us and fit for them.
Questions, Dan?
Yeah, makes perfectly good sense. But obviously, somebody who's a known entity. So I move to accept the statement of qualifications from Landmark Engineering as presented and add the company to the town's list of qualified engineering firms.
Second?
Seconded. So if there are no other questions or comments, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Okay, thank you. The second item is Colonial Drive Engineering Amendment. That's amendment number 3. This is with Green Mountain Engineering. Just as a brief summary, this project is currently out for bid. We anticipate to do it when spring weather breaks. And this is Colonial Drive from one side of entrance of Washington Street all the way around the loop past the insurance company back to the other side there on Washington Street. So it's a water main loop, sanitary sewer, stormwater, and street reconstruction. So it's a big project. This amendment is for the bid and construction phase services, construction administration, and construction inspection. Most of it is the boots on the ground for the inspectors to see the work that's going to take place. That cost is a total of $108,500. Yeah, it sounds like a big number, but it's a big project. So the amount of construction, the construction period is going to be about 21 weeks of full-time inspection throughout the summer. That's about 5 months or so. And then there'll be another 48 hours or so of part-time inspection as the project wraps up. So the Colonial Drive residents will see pretty much from May until October under some form of construction. It also includes, the administration, final completion, punch lists, and record drawings are part of that. So it's from right now till the end of the project. These are the engineering costs as anticipated. The project is around a $970,000 project. It's being funded by 3 sources of capital improvements funds. That's the highway fund, the water fund, and the sewer fund. The majority of the cost is the highway capital improvements. So, like I said, it's a big project. It's been long in the anticipation to get this done. Lots of issues with drainage, and especially during the winter and freezing over the streets. It's been a mess for the highway department to deal with. So I'm requesting the board to approve Green Mountain's amendment for engineering services for the $108,500.
Dan, would you just remind the board about the overall price tag for that project?
Yes, estimated around $975,000. And those bids for this project will come to you in January.
I'll move to approve amendment number 3 to the town's contract with Green Mountain Engineering for the bid phase and construction phase services for the Colonial Drive Improvements Project at a total cost of $108,500.
Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, thanks, Dan.
Okay, thank you very much. Have a good evening. Have a good holiday.
Yes.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you,
Thank
Dan.
you. Okay, you're welcome. Bye-bye.
We're starting to gear up for construction season. Haven't noticed. Christina, we have more stuff that we talked about, but not ready to bring to the board and the infrastructure last week, so
Good.
more coming.
That's good to be ahead of the, a lot of others, I'm sure.
I didn't say we were ahead.
It
I just said we were working.
I think right now, are you afloat?
I just set a standard for you to achieve. Okay, next is participation in national opioid settlement. Kathleen, I'm not terribly familiar with this. Can you help me on that?
Sure. In November of 2019, you opted into the opioids class action suit brought by municipalities nationwide. Now there is a proposed settlement that the Vermont Attorney General has accepted. And what we have to do is say that we are interested in our share of that settlement. So if you would authorize me to sign the paperwork, it would be our share of $65 million for the Vermont settlement, paid out over 18 years.
That was what, 1.3% or something like that?
So I don't want, that's a decent amount of money, and I would not like to get anybody's hopes up to get some confirmation.
Yeah, I wasn't ready to spend it yet, but.
Plus it's paid out over 18 years. It's quite a long term.
And the requirements, what it has to be spent.
And you have to spend it on prevention.
Yeah. Well, I read the whole thing and I was like,
Yeah.
that's a lot of money. But, they could appeal or who knows, there was a caveat in there that if they had hard times, they could withhold payment, pay it later.
Yeah. Right.
Any questions on this?
I'll move to authorize Town Manager Kathleen Ramsey to sign the National Opioid Settlement Participation Form.
So,
All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, I think we have a crowd here waiting for our next item, discussion of legislation permitting towns to enact local indoor mask policies. So, as we've all read and are aware of, the Vermont legislature passed, Governor Scott signed into law Act 1, which authorizes municipal governing bodies to enact indoor masking policies on a town-by-town basis in response to the ongoing pandemic. And this is an opportunity for us as a select board to discuss the new law and what steps, if any, the board wishes to take in Middlebury in response. And, attached to our packet was our September 9th, 2020 mask resolution. And there was many letters that are in our packet. I think throughout the day we were getting more, and Kathleen was sending them out and batching them and sending them out. I had also asked Chief Hanley for his thoughts on this, and those were in the packet as well. So I'll open the floor to the board. And thoughts.
might as well start off. First of all, I want to note that Farhad was unable to be here tonight, but he did say in the mask mandate, I support a similar resolution that we passed last year, which is referring to the September 9th, 2021. He agrees with Chief Henry that a mandate with a fine is not the way to go, and enforcement is a challenge. He said, I do not want to see undue stress on small businesses. I think since Farhad's business and what he does puts him right in the trenches every day. So I understand. My own personal view on this is that when I look and I served with a number of tremendous board members through the year, through all the years I've been on, and one of them I really appreciated being with Victor Noble. And for anybody, really got to know Victor, he's the quintessential philosopher and practitioner of good governance. And I learned a lot from Victor about governance. I would talk to him frequently about through the years, and as I tried to gain more knowledge, well, he always had plenty to present. And before I knew it, I'm reading Lucretius and John Locke and Plato and things on governance. But what he would stress, and as you recall from the times he was here at the meetings and afterwards, This governance is based on logic and reason, and that's based on knowledge and fact, not emotions, not opinion. When Governor Scott was here this summer at the close of the bridge project, I had a chance to have a conversation with him for a few minutes and discuss kind of how the pandemic played out. And like many, I said, I did not like the fact that we had a lockdown. I didn't like the fact of the quarantining. Didn't like the restrictions, but I had to admit that this event was serious and that there were millions of professionals out there with much more knowledge on this subject and were able to actually look at it from a scientific and objective reason. I had to trust the science. And the governor said to me that from the very beginning, they realized this was a dynamic situation and they had to base their policies on data, which is the logic and reason that Victor would talk about. So the state health commissioner and the governor continue to receive ongoing updates multiple times a day because that's what they do. And there's a lot of data out there that they're constantly receiving. So based on that current information, they have not seen the need to implement an emergency directive that requires masks. So the question I have is, do we on this board have more knowledge and expertise on this subject than the state health director and the governor? Our own Chief Hanley, who, as we all know, has done an outstanding job during the pandemic as Middlebury's emergency management director. And he kept keeping us informed on what was a very dynamic and changing situation, ensuring that the basic services of the town continue to function and that we are aware of what's going on. And to this board, he's presented some pretty good arguments against a mask mandate, including it's not enforceable. And so, again, do we have more knowledge about this subject than Chief Hanley? Now, when I look around this table, I see an array of expertise, skills, and experiences in many, many disciplines. What I don't see are medical professionals, infectious disease specialists, biochemistry researchers. Once again, can we on this board honestly say, and accurately say, that we have more knowledge and expertise on this subject than the professionals who we've trusted throughout the pandemic? Now, I'll admit to each and every one of you, and as a professional in a different discipline who knows my own knowledge limitations, that I don't have this expertise. To do so otherwise for me is just pretending. So I'll admit that I'm a firm believer in science and scientific methodology, and therefore I must trust the experts, the health professionals, and the scientists. Several of our neighboring towns, Bridgeends, Bristol, Brandon, have wisely recognized they don't have the knowledge and expertise and skills and decided not to create an unenforceable mandate. Many of our businesses, including some retail and food service, have decided to require masks. Others, such as our service centers and professional offices, have not. In either case, I'm fine with that. We can decide if we want to be patrons or not based on what they offer and what their mask policies are. But again, I think in the case of Fahad, he's had situations where even when we had this ordinance in place that was set up, somebody would come into his store without a mask. It puts him into the unenviable position of trying to enforce it. And then somebody who was there observing this would call the police and say, there's an unmasked person in Fahad's store and Fahad's not enforcing it. So now it tied the police time, which we already know is pretty slammed, and creates really an unfortunate situation. In fact, as Chief Hanley pointed out, in Williston, they enacted more mask ordinance, and the police have said, we're not responding to the situations. They're realistic about it. So therefore, in closing, unless we can truthfully state that we have more knowledge, more readily available facts and constant data about the subject than our professionals, the State Health Commissioner and the State Health Department, the Governor, and Chief Hanley, then to implement a mandate is quite honestly inappropriate. So I could certainly concur with Fahad's idea. If you want to reenact the recommendation, fine, but for a mandate that can't be enforced, it's unwise. And Doesn't fit in with the logic and reason.
Right. And Nick, I think, I understand what you're saying, but you're saying that if we don't have anybody that sits on here that has the expertise to make that decision, we can't make it. However, our governor and everybody is saying that we should be wearing masks. The CDC, every health expert is saying we should wear masks. So somebody sitting on this select board, well, none of us have, we all have the access to that knowledge. So one of us being a doctor is not going to make any difference. Ours is to govern, not to make medical decisions. And we're making a decision whether to wear the mask. And it is based on information that there's significant information that says we should. And the governor, I might be wrong here, but the governor has not made that because he feels that he has to declare an emergency to be able for him to establish a mask mandate. And he doesn't want to do that because it entails a lot of other things. And I think the chiefs is just enforcement. And we enacted I'm not sure if we could call it a mandate, but we enacted something last year which was unenforceable. It was, if you read it, and the chief, I think then, I think he opposed that also at that time. So I think your logic is wrong. We have plenty of data out there that says we should be wearing masks. A lot of data that says that. And yeah.
Well, counter to that is, I'm really not counter. You mentioned the word should. CDC says should. What we passed last year in advance of any mandate directive from the state was essentially an item that said we should. It's something we advise. It's not a we shall, or you shall. And that's the difference between a mandate. A mandate is absolute, and a recommendation is a should. So what Fahad is suggesting is really going back to what we did in September 9th, 2021. Right. And that makes perfectly good sense. But it's a situation where it is a strong recommendation. But if somebody walks into an establishment or an establishment chooses not to have a mask mandate, then quite simply, that's their choice.
Well, any business in town can deny service at any time.
That's
for a lot more than just masks. So that's a given, but at least it makes them have something they say the town supports what I'm doing. I talked to several restaurants, and all restaurants support us making a stance about requiring masks. I haven't talked to all of them. I haven't talked to a whole lot of businesses, but we're certainly with the number of emails we've gotten, we certainly have a strong sense that the community supports that also. So mine is not a position to make a medical decision. Mine is to make a decision on how to govern the community. So I think we've got enough data to make that decision. And I recommend that we do what we did last time.
And if I could add one more comment, I've talked to several who are not restaurateurs and not retail. They're professional services. They are service centers. They're saying this will impact, my mechanics have to wear them all the time. They are saying that some of them are saying, I'm just not going to do it. And in fact, while we have, received 10 letters or so, one was Mr. Baggy, who was against it. I think he made some good arguments. I've heard from several who said, I don't want to do it. So I said, well, present that to us. You present your point. And their comment was, I don't want to be seen going against what seems counter to what seems to be a groundswell of enthusiasm for this. And I don't want to feel embarrassed by having to go along and be counter. And so 10 to 20 letters is not exclusively the majority of 8,500 people in the town. I think it's a good indication. So again, I think what we're saying is almost the same thing again. Is a recommendation, September 9th, 2021, but not, you must.
Let me see comments from the other members here. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very much in agreement with Farhad's position. you know, I think before when we were in a state of emergency, we didn't enact a mandate, we enacted a resolution. I would very much support that. I think the additional signage and that additional support for the businesses that want it, it'll be there. It's not going to create an issue with our limited police force needing to enforce something, but it will remind people that the pandemic is still happening. And hopefully it'll help just support that culture of, you know, in Middlebury, we keep our masks on. So I'm in agreement with Farha. I think we're kind of so far mostly in agreement,
Yes.
but I think that's the right way to go.
I guess I would be in support of doing the resolution. I'm not in support of a mandate. For a lot of the reason, I have concerns about enforcement and how that all works. And what I look around and see is when I'm anywhere in Middlebury or even other places is that people are following the mask, wearing the mask already for the most part. Anywhere I go, you know, people are doing the right thing. And I guess without us having a mandate and I don't think that the people who aren't following, you know, or choosing not to wear a mask, having a mandate, I don't think it's going to make any difference. So I'm just reluctant to create more work for the police department, create more opportunity for conflict. I wasn't even sure that we really needed to say we recommend it, but I'm not opposed to doing that.
Wow, thank you, everybody. And interesting to listen as I wasn't here before for the September 9th, 2020. I think you all did a great job last year, and I would support us doing the same thing. A mandate would make it tough on our police, police force, and on business owners. So I feel like what you did last year should suffice.
Is there somebody in the audience who wants to make a statement here?
Before we do that, are you going to comment?
I am going to comment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you made us all comment.
I'm trying to comment, yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
I'm holding your
Stand
feet
up
to the
for-
fire.
This chair over here. Is it the chair? Okay.
Hello, I'm Peter Schumer. I live in Middlebury. I know a few of you. Thank you all for your service to the community. Even though I've heard your discussion and probably won't sway any votes here, I'm very much in favor of a strong mandate, masking mandate. I think we're fooling ourselves to think that the situation last summer or last winter was the worst of the pandemic. We had 10 or 20 cases of Vermont daily during the summer, and now we're having 500, 700. The number, if you look at the scale of death in Vermont, it's much higher. The country has had over 800,000 Americans die of this in less than 2 years. Over 50 million are sick. The worst number of cases we had in Vermont last winter was 3,000. Currently, there's more than 10,000 positive cases in Vermont. And Middlebury itself is not an island. We can travel to other cities and other states. And Middlebury College learned the lesson the hard way by allowing students to come back after Thanksgiving. I work at the college. Having a mask mandate is something that you could review each month. But as we're approaching, I think what we've learned from Thanksgiving, we should realize a similar thing could very much happen Christmas time. And since this is something that you can review each month, you could implement it at least for a month and see what the effect is. The effect of mask mandates has been very dramatic in every state and country that has implemented it. I'm not a medical professional. My daughter is a physician at the University of UVM Medical Center. And it's clear to her and to other experts that vaccination is the most important, masking is the second most important, and probably social distancing the third most important. Having a mandate isn't meant to antagonize those who choose to break the law. most people think of themselves as law-abiding citizens, and they are, but if there's no law, they can do whatever they wish. If there is a law, they have to make a decision, and it gives the store owners a little bit of backing, knowing that that's what the rule is. I wouldn't really worry about the policing. People are going to break the rules, but even though many people travel more than 25 miles an hour on streets or more than 50 miles an hour driving on Route 7, I see every day, we still put up signs and we still have laws. And it's possible that you could get a fine, though it's not necessary for police to spend all their time if they consider that a secondary job. So I think it really behooves us to, for the sake of everybody's health and well-being, I feel antagonized when I go to the grocery store. At the co-op, they have a sign that everybody has to wear a mask, but it's not the case, say, at Shaw's and at Hannaford's. And there, the majority of people do comply, but a strong minority, which is, probably dozens and dozens of people every time I'm in there, are not wearing masks. And if I say to someone, please put a mask on, and Shaw's used to have a sign up, obviously I don't have any backing of legal authority, and people say, mind your own business, take care of yourself, I'll take care of me. But the fact is, when we wear a mask, we are taking care of not just ourselves, but of our neighbors as well. If you're not wearing a mask, you're not taking care of yourself or of your neighbors. And it seems like you should show some leadership to remind everybody what their expectations more than just should be, but actually should be the law, I feel. So I'm speaking in favor of that on behalf of myself and many of my friends and family. Thank you.
Can we let everybody speak?
Okay, I got a question, but I can wait till you, sure.
Yeah. Sure, thank you.
I have a Dave Silverman who is on Zoom.
Hi, Dave.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having this conversation. I'll try to be brief. Governor Scott and Commissioner Levine have not made their decision on masking based on the advice of medical experts. They've made their decision based on political factors. Dr. Levine said so when he responded to a letter from 92, I believe it was, of the Department of Health's staff asking him to take firmer action. And he responded saying, look, sometimes we have to make political decisions that aren't what the science tells us we have to do. The experts, the virologists, the infectious disease specialists, they all tell us to mask. The data tells us that mask mandates increase compliance. Arizona didn't have a mandate, put in a mandate, and they saw a 30 percentage point roughly increase in mask wearing out in public. That slowed their spread. We're having explosive spread. We're seeing new cases every couple of days, new record cases every couple of days. Our hospitals statewide are full. Our ICUs are full. We're at the breaking point statewide. We have doctors and nurses quitting. We can't staff our hospitals. And it's going to get worse because Christmas is coming and people are going to gather. And look, Hanley, 100%, we shouldn't have the police be out there in the enforcement role. They don't need to be. We don't need a mandate to be accompanied by fines or heavy-handed enforcement. The fact that you as a select board speak for the town and say the town of Middlebury requires mask wearing in public, that says a lot. It sets the social expectation for the residents of this town and the people who come to this town to shop that the town of Middlebury expects them to behave in this particular way. And that will change behavior. It won't get to 100% compliance. We don't need 100% compliance. The way this virus works, 90% compliance would be better than 40% compliance. 75% compliance would be better than 40% compliance. It's about slowing the spread. We're not going to get it to zero, but we can slow it. We can save lives that way. And so we don't need fines. We just need to educate. And one thing that you can do, and one thing that this new law from the legislature allows you to do is similar to what Burlington did. Burlington enacted a mask mandate, but they made an exception. They made an exception for any business that takes reasonable steps to verify that everyone inside is fully vaccinated. And across the lake in New York State, statewide, that's also the new rule as of last Friday. Every indoor business has to be masked unless the business verifies that everyone is vaccinated. And if you were to do that, you would encourage more vaccination as well. And so I really want to urge you to take stronger action, to say shall, not should. I think it's really unfortunate that the buck got passed to you. This really should be done at a statewide level. Governor Scott should be the leader that Vermonters elected, but he's shying away from it, and he passed that buck to you. The buck has to stop with you, I'm very sorry to say, because you have no one else to pass it to. And I hope you'll act. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dave.
Well, I was on the side of the resolution and should, but after listening to what I've just listened to and reading the emails that you got, I really do think that we should move to a shall position. And I would echo a lot of what David said. And I think you can have these exceptions. And I saw in Lisa's message from Town Hall Theater that the performers are required to be vaccinated, so that's like an example of an exception. I work at the Unitarian Church, and speakers can be unmasked while speaking, but they're vaccinated, so you have these exceptions. But still, everyone that attends has to be masked. That comes, and they have to be distanced. And I think that you could construct a mandate that is like that. And I agree that you don't have to have fines attached, and I agree that, it gives citizens the ability to help each other, through this very critical time of protecting us for the common good. Thanks.
Is there anybody else on online?
We do have another person on Zoom. Sylvianne Acker was first, so I'll promote her to panelist.
Hey, Sylvia, if you could unmute yourself.
Sylvianne, can you unmute yourself? Okay, there's one.
Hello, I'm sorry. I was on mute for a minute.
Okay. Welcome.
Hi. I would like to see a mandate for Middlebury because the hospitals are overloaded, as it has been shown. The data definitely supports masking as a preventive measure, and I am totally applauding the businesses in town who demand that patrons be masked. I feel terribly uncomfortable to go to any other places that are not masked and don't ask for it. I like to emphasize that only 5% of people, 5% of Vermont residents are unvaccinated, and that they represent 75% of the people that are actually contaminated. I would also like to bring the fact that we have a new variant that is still not known around here yet, but that may have a bigger impact than it was thought at first. From South Africa, they believed that it was not extremely lethal, but now it appears that it is because many of the people in South Africa had already had COVID, sometimes twice, and had built up a natural immunity. So back to us, where we are mostly all vaccinated, except for a few people. Some of them are just resisting the idea of vaccination for personal reasons, a few probably for health reasons that are very legitimate. We have to protect these people. Even those who don't want to be vaccinated, we should try to protect them because this is the only way we will end the pandemic, is by stopping infections. And the mask is a small price to pay, except for Mr. Carpenter, who cannot be heard behind the mask very well. But that is a different problem. So, sorry, Mr. Carpenter, I'm just picking on you. Anyways, this is my take. I'm only one citizen of Middlebury, and I love this town and I love all the people that are in it. And I will not go out without my mask, even though I have been vaccinated and a third time got a booster. This is my way to say thank you to the people and to show my love, is be vaccinated. Now, about enforcement, one more thing. It is not necessary to enforce, as the young man who was speaking before about speeding. My gosh, we cannot catch everybody who breaks the law, but at least they will know they are breaking the law. I can be in a store and say to a person very gently, sir, we have a mandate to wear a mask. And when you don't, you are breaking the law. It's not, I'm not a policeman, but I've done it in the market. I said to a young lady, excuse me, miss, you are wearing your mask under your nose. It is not exactly the purpose of a mask. The nose has to be involved. So anyway, enough. Good night. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia.
I'm Joe McVeigh from Middlebury. I'm also the president of the Ilse Library Board of Trustees. At our trustees meeting last night, the trustees voted to require masks in the library. The library is probably the most public-facing part of the town. And Dana has indicated that we're getting an increasing number of comments from patrons who are uncomfortable coming into the library and seeing people unmasked. There are issues with the staff sometimes in a challenging position. People may be unhappy if they're asked to mask if they don't want to. Other people are unhappy if they see people who are not masked. But we feel that this is a responsible thing to do in the library. I would also echo Pete Schumer's comments. I think that as the board, though you may not be medical experts, you are governance experts. You have a responsibility for the safety of the town. I think there are issues here that relate to the economy. There may be people who will not shop in places if they're not feeling safe. And if we lose citizens, we're losing tax dollars. I would encourage you to, I would support a resolution that would require masks. Thank you.
We have Bruce Burgess, I believe.
Hi, Bruce.
Hello there, how are you?
Thanks.
I'd like to speak, first of all, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. I'd like to speak in favor of a mask mandate. And I'd like to approach it this way, that when the meeting is over, and the headlines come out, I'd like the board to consider whether the message that they are sending to the town and the media would be strongest in that we don't think that the conditions warrant mask mandate, versus when the meeting is over and the headlines come out, that your statement that wearing a mask and social distancing outweighs your statement that you think that a mask mandate is not required. So I think that if you don't believe that a mandate is required, certainly you must believe that masks are useful in controlling the spread of the virus and that social distancing is. And I'd like that message to be louder than your denial of a mask mandate. I'd like you to think about that, and I hope that's the way you decide to introduce a resolution that comes out strongly in that favor. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Do you need to make another statement?
Yeah.
I'd really like to get out. I don't want to spend all night on this.
It's not,
please.
it's really related, because I know that Tom raised a good point, that he said if this goes to ordinance, that could be 3 months. So is there another way? We don't want 3 months, we want to get to this faster, so that's all. I just wanted to say.
Is there anybody who hasn't had a chance to speak yet?
We have a couple of comments in the chat.
Can you read those to
I'll
us?
go through them very quickly. Ellen Oxfeld would just like to support the statement that Peter Schumer just made. It was very reasonable. Mary Chapman thanked David Silverman for his comments and noted that she also supports Peter, David, and Ellen Oxfeld's comments. George Cloak said that I absolutely support a mask mandate in Middlebury. The recent speaker's testimony is compelling. And Dorothy Mammon, I just want to say that I think the Brattleboro Select Board's resolution is an excellent model. You could substitute Addison for Windham County and Middlebury for Brattleboro, and you'd have an excellent resolution.
I remember the last letter we got today was,
Was the one that went to all of
Olmec.
us. Yep. One that went to, the last one that went to all of us, that's the last one I have.
Is that from Julie?
Yep. I think some of the ones that Kathleen included in her,
There's a whole bunch that
Email
was sent
us.
to me and I
Yeah.
forwarded them to Kathleen.
I hadn't
to get it
seen
all
all
back.
of them. can I just add one quick thing?
Yep.
So I went to the first high school boys home ice hockey game the other night. And it was home in the rink. And we do not have a mask mandate, but there was a sign on the door and it said mask required. And everybody in that facility, 100% in that facility, was wearing a mask. And we don't have a mask mandate. And I see that everywhere I go. And David Silverman mentioned 75% would be 40%. Everywhere I go, I do see a few occasional people without masks. But I would say the numbers are not in the 90% of people already complying with no mandate. And I don't know. I just don't know that it's worth the potential conflicts that arise from a mandate.
Well, shouldn't we support those people? Shouldn't we support those people and stand up for them?
They're already
Stand up for
doing it.
who? The people that are already wearing the masks. Why do you have to stand up for them? They're doing the job. I just don't get it, guys. Look, so, Victoria.
Heather, I have to agree that it's happening everywhere, because I've heard about the 3-on-3 basketball tournament a couple of weeks ago. Most of the audience and the players were not masked. I heard about the midnight stroll last week, indoors, a big crowd of people shopping, and most of them didn't have masks.
Where was that? I was down here. They were all.
I didn't, it was
I
someone
saw a
who
letter
told me
about
about it.
that. That's hogwash.
I was downtown the.
Everybody was
It's-
masked downtown.
I think, people have spoken so eloquently, you've had an overwhelming response in support of the mandate. I think it would help businesses to have a place to fall back on to say, you know, we're being required to have masks, could you please put one on? I think it helps businesses to do that. And if you combine it some way with vaccination, as Two Brothers says, they're now requiring you must be vaccinated to come in the restaurant. So be creative, think of a way to do it, but I think just saying, oh, we recommend it, it really doesn't send the right message.
Two Brothers actually requires vaccinations now.
And they're doing that without any kind of mandate from the state and from us.
The town is doing a good job, but most of the citizens are. And as Heather said, there's a sign up. Without the mandate, there's a sign up that said, please wear a mask, and everybody did. But just
No, it said mask required.
mask required, okay.
Like, if
Even,
you wanted to go into the game, you had to wear a mask.
so thank you for making my point is what I'm trying to say. If we had a mandate, that sign would be up everywhere, not just in a few places. And obviously people do follow when they see those signs.
Yeah, I disagree.
Yeah, I do. So, we're at the end of the discussion on this. We're gonna come to a vote, but I'm gonna make you ask me for my comments. I've given this a lot of thought. I've been reading about it. I got a lot of notes from people. I understand that the two best things you can do, I mean, it is undeniably clear. The two best things you can do is get vaccinated. And if you're in a group and not knowing that everybody's vaccinated, to wear a mask. That's a personal choice, though. It's not a lot. I employ well over 100 people, and my staff here in Middlebury has a very high vaccination rate. My staff at another store, totally different community, has about a 50% vaccination rate. It's very community driven. My wife and I came downtown to the midnight stroll. We love the midnight stroll. And we came down and it was packed on Thursday evening. And I was awfully proud to go into those, all the places when you're in a packed crowd like that and you don't know whether people are vaccinated or not and everything, everybody should be wearing masks. But it's happening in Middlebury. It just happens. And why we have to mandate something when it's happening, I'm just like carpet bombing. We're trying to solve the problems we're reading about in the paper that are happening in other communities more so than here, that are happening around the U.S. And we're trying to solve them in Middlebury, and it's creating, to me, it's going to create tension. And one of the things I'm proudest about in Middlebury is we can do it without having to legislate and mandate. That our community is highly educated. We have a community that does the right thing without having to mandate it. When you look at a mandate, I look at enforcement. And we say, well, we don't want the police doing that. Well, you know what happens? You get a few people who become the mask patrols, and they're going to call the police every time. And this happened the last time that we had a mandate, and people were called because there was a state mandate, and people were calling the police, and the police were running, and it was just contentious, and it tied up a lot of our police time. And without without something that can tie to an enforcement action, it's really a waste. The police become more trying to calm everybody down because there's nothing they can force. Our businesses, and we say, well, you know, people, we're going to lose business. I don't agree with that. If you look at the tax revenues, it just doesn't support the hypothesis. It's a red herring. And we have very different businesses in this community. We have the ones in downtown where you get some tourists, and you get a lot of college students and whatnot, and you have ones on the outskirts of the community. They're more rurally driven. They're different people going into it, and we all have free choice. We all can either go to the business or we can not go to the business. And if we know that the business doesn't have a standard that we're comfortable with, we don't have to go into that business right now. And so I guess I hear everybody saying this, but the data just doesn't show it to me. And I looked at the data for Addison County. If it hadn't been for Middlebury College's outbreak, which was very clearly not tied, they have a mask mandate up there, and it's not tied to, there's those students are all vaccinated for the most part too. It was tied to them going home and being in big groups and probably partying on the holidays with friends and whatnot. It wasn't tied to going into our stores downtown. And so it wasn't communal spread in the way that we're thinking that we're going to stop it here. And so I just don't feel it's right for our governance to put our police in a position, our already understaffed police in a position where they're out policing something that is, number one, unenforceable, and number two, being followed by just the rule of being good community citizens already within our community. I do like the idea of us making a statement that says that we support it, we recommend it, and that we have the choice what we do in our town offices, and that now, like Joe said, hearing the concerns and everything, and to make sure that those users of our town facilities are comfortable, that everybody has the same comfort level, that we require masks within all of our town facilities. I think we're then making a very clear statement, we're setting a standard, and all businesses, it's free for business to do like what Two Brothers, I guess, is doing. They have the ability. I mean, you go to New York City, you go to Boston, if you're going to eat in a restaurant, you need to be vaccinated. Otherwise, it's takeout only. Those are things that are done on a much wider basis. I think that the state, if you're going to do anything like a mask mandate, it needs to come from the state. In my so.
I just have a question. For us to enact anything that's enforceable by the police would have to be an ordinance, correct? Yeah. So if we make a resolution, that's not enforceable.
But it gives what people, yes, correct. So it gives them, it's at least making a statement that we recommend or support those businesses that would like to do it, which is what we did last time.
Right. Okay.
An ordinance could, by the time you go through the whole process,
You're supposed to have an ordinance. Nothing we're gonna do here tonight is gonna be enforceable. But I think, I I'm not sure what I hear you say, but I think we should, as a select board, make some statement about mask wearing in town.
Kathleen, I was trying to find the minutes.
I don't know what you can't tell us your.
I'm not in favor of a mandate or requirement, us saying requirement. I have staff who are working inside the building for 12 hours a day, and I have bought all the sneeze guards, which keeps it to themselves, and you know, a mask is good for how long? If you're going to sit there and breathe it for 12 hours, I just don't think that we're not going to change out their masks. A lot of them, you know, how many people wash their mask every night? I mean, people change out their mask every night. I think that in a big airy building, so to say that everybody who's inside should be masked, I'm not sure I agree with that. I think sometimes you can be just as good. If you have good circulation and you have division of space.
I think let me ask this question. We're talking about make a resolution for, mask wearing in public settings. Is the back offices in your shop and everything, is that a public setting? No, that's not a public setting. So we're talking, at least that would be my interpretation. In somebody's offices where nobody goes in, that's not a public setting, that's your office. Public setting is where you're going into a public building, into a restaurant, which is a public, in front of the house is a public building, and a store is a public building. So I think whatever we do is not going to impact what goes on in your business, except out on the floor.
Well, it'll impact grocery stores.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's why I just don't think a resolution, so a recommendation or something like what we did before, I'm fully supportive of. But if we say that we're gonna make it a mandate in a public space, then everybody, and somebody who's, there are people who won't wear a mask. Every time they're in the Shaw's or Hannaford grocery store, are we gonna have the police get called from?
No, we can't, because it's not enforceable. Nothing we're gonna do here is gonna be enforceable. That's gonna be up to the business. It's gonna have, the business is the one that are gonna have to decide whether they're gonna enforce it. And they can enforce it by doing denial of service, or they can just let it go by.
Right.
I don't think.
So.
Fortunately, we have a group of great people who are supporting this, and I think that's great. What we need to do is support those people with a resolution that say we support you and requiring masks.
Okay, and I do support them, but but not at the expense of those who have, we got like Costello's, I'll give you an example, Costello's. They have no intention of putting a mask mandate on their store.
Right.
So if you don't want to be near, that's a public place. So if you don't want to be near that, then don't go to Costello's.
I agree. There's no way we can enforce it.
You know how many times we had the police called on at Costello's the last time?
No, I don't.
Oh,
I didn't get that data.
It was crazy. I don't have the number, but I know they were down there a lot. Because everybody was calling them.
And then they're hurting their own business, so.
No, they're having record business.
Everybody is.
Could I ask, if the board rescinded the June 9th, 2020 resolution, or is that still in force?
I think we rescinded it when the emergency order, it was in effect as long as the emergency order was in effect.
It fell off when the emergency order.
But the board could perhaps, should it think appropriate, reaffirm that resolution.
We could.
Yes.
That's what we're talking about.
Rewriting it, yes.
Kathleen generously brought up the resolution, and there are certainly some elements that are no longer applicable because it was head-end stuff. But the bottom line is the last italicized part. By resolution of the Middlebury Selectboard, persons entering this facility should wear protective face coverings that cover their nose and mouth in order to assist in controlling the spread of the COVID-19 virus. That becomes a recommendation. It makes the statement. It's not a mandatory thing that then enters into one ordinance, two enforceability issues. And so we think this is important, but it does leave it up to the individual business to decide. And so, but we already have the language, we've worked, and I kind of think we're all on the same page.
Support that?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that.
No, I'm just trying to at first I didn't know whether you supported anything.
No, this is.
Yeah, and the word is going to be should and not shall.
Should not shall.
Should is a recommended, shall is only mandatory.
And the business can make it to a shall for their business. They own their business. We do not control what goes on.
They can do that now.
They can do that now.
Unless we
And
create an ordinance.
a lot of them are.
A lot of them have, and
I know. The residents
My daughter went to a birthday party at the Marquis Theater and all of those kids had masks on for that birthday
John
party.
Hall Theater has the same thing.
You know, I just saw a Facebook post, I mean, beyond the vaccination for two brothers, if you don't want to wear a mask, they will provide you with takeout. And they're doing that already.
Yes. But I think we need to have some type of resolution so that we support that.
Okay.
That's what this was.
Yeah, we're all in
Town
agreement.
Middlebury Select Board resolution.
I know.
So can we have something to approve next time? Or do we want to do something sooner?
We probably should do something sooner.
We could do it sooner, we can sign
I
it.
think we can approve that and have Kathleen approve that we update this resolution.
Right.
And have Kathleen do it, and then we'll swing by and sign it.
We need a motion for that?
Yes.
Please.
Okay, I'm gonna make a motion that we, the select board, have a town Middlebury Select Board resolution that essentially says, by resolution of the Middlebury Select Board, persons entering this facility should wear protective face coverings that cover their nose and mouth in order to assist with controlling spread of the COVID-19 virus.
Okay.
And I think if you're using the last one, we should cross out the outdoors portion of it
Yeah, we'll
in the
update it.
resolution.
This gets us moving on it. Our capability to write up something, we'll present it.
We cover those and whatever, instead of focus setting or outdoors or possible, like.
So updating it to just indoors.
Just indoors. Is that your motion? Okay, and it'll be this resolution, similar to that with the bottom. Okay, I can second that.
Okay.
I think Lindsay seconded already.
Okay.
We can third
So then you'll just circulate it to us on an email if there's any. So we'll just wordsmith it so nobody comes by and signs it and somebody sees something, so.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
All right. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay.
Now, who's gonna call WCA or email WCA yet?
What it feels like.
You're the boss.
Did they want to direct cold?
If they wanted, they should have been here.
That's right. We're not getting camera.
Okay. Board members concerns.
Check list.
And broadband.
Broadband, okay, yeah. Check.
There is an update in your packet from Vermont Broadband Board, which approved a private-public partnership to advance purchase fiber.
Okay.
It's all over the news today.
Yeah, it's kind of a cool thing.
Yeah, it is.
I knew about that a little bit.
Yeah.
Because the Martin Foundation was part of it.
Oh, that's cool.
They're part of the financing.
Lindsay, check warrants.
All right, I move to approve total expenditures in the amount of $1,069,404.36, consisting of $786,617.49 for accounts payable and $282,786.87 for payroll for the period of November 17th, 2021 through December 14th, 2021.
Moving seconded, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, board member concerns. Lindsay?
I just really appreciate how engaged our town is and how everybody took the time out of their busy schedules to weigh in on this subject. Obviously, emotions are running high and concerns are running high, and we need to do what we can to take care of each other. So I just want to say how much I appreciate everyone who took the time, regardless of how they felt about it, to share their opinion with us. We're often making opinions in a little bit of a vacuum because we don't always get feedback from the town. So I really, again, just appreciate that people took the time to say something.
Thanks, Lindsay, good point. Nick?
let's shift away from what we're tired of hearing about is COVID and masking and social distancing. Let's recognize the fact that, first of all, amazingly, I believe we're saying it's the end of another year, and preparing to start a new one. I actually walked into the meeting today because one, I just felt like walking, and two, I just wanted to see the downtown at night. When you think about what we've been through the last few years, it's fantastic looking. It just really shows well. And I see a, no pun intended, bright future for what we're going to happen. I think there's a lot of momentum moving on. I want to, once again, thank the town staff and all of the employees. You know, they do so much that we just don't see. Some of the stuff is very obvious. You know, they plow our streets and they make sure the sidewalks are in good shape. You know, the police respond to an emergency. You know, the fire trucks respond to an emergency. There's so many other things that go on behind the scenes that people don't realize, and keeps this town as a great place to be, and one that really very proud of the way that governance in this town works really, really well. So, from Kathleen through to everybody on the staff, thanks for what you do for making another great year. And it's, once again, it's an honor to serve with all of you. I mean, it really is. I think we've had some great discussions. I appreciate the fact that we don't agree with each other all the time, because that's what makes a better decision. You know, I feel like we've had some years in history where it seems like we always agree with everything, and that was fine. But, you know, to hear some competing thoughts, that's what makes really ultimately the best answer. And so, as we get into this holiday season, you know, whatever your faith-based views are, make it a good season, make it a joyous season, one of peace and health and happiness, and we'll get through this thing. And let's enjoy each other. Kind of limited time on the planet we have together. Happy holidays all.
Thanks, Nick. Esther?
This was a good meeting. I would say I appreciate everybody who emailed and weighed in. Definitely a hard decision to make, but when it comes to the mask, I know that we have I don't know. I feel all the emotions of everyone and the different feelings from the emails. But I think I stand by the decision we made. I'm proud of what we do, as hard as it is.
Thanks, Esther. Yeah.
Well, I think it was a pretty easy decision, but I appreciate all the input and the discussions. And it is healthy that we do these things. But the only thing I want to say is I hope everybody has a happy holiday, stay healthy and safe. And look forward to one more meeting this year, but I look forward to this next year.
I don't really have much to add other than, if you haven't been into the library, you should go and put your mask on and see the beautiful decorations that the garden club does, and the amazing tree in the window there. It's really incredible. So if you do make it downtown, go in the library with your mask on and see the tree. And happy holidays, Merry Christmas. See you guys all in a couple weeks.
If I could jump in here with a quick comment on the library. You'll notice the very, very last item in your board packet is Library Director Dana Hart's monthly report. And just in case you didn't make it through everything to the board, to her report, under facilities, Dana noted 2 separate instances of people being stuck in the elevator. In one case, a patron, in another case, a staff member who was alone in the building and was stuck in the elevator for an hour. Secondly, 5 separate calls to Flukes for help with the boiler. That included Dana getting an alarm at her house in Lincoln at midnight on a Sunday night and coming down to the library to help with some flooding and getting home about 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning. So I encourage you to bear that in mind when you do get to the capital budget and the proposed bond for the heating project. And I look forward to giving you an update on the work of the the working group that, Lindsay and Dan are on at Edge.
Threw me off there, Joe.
Oh, sorry about that. I don't know.
That's the first time I've had anybody from the audience on board member concerns. So. Well, hey, love, that we can have dialogue on so many different issues and, the idea that we're operating in a vacuum is, we certainly aren't. So having the community providing us input, it's always nice, like Lindsay says, there's times where you wonder if we're doing, are they happy with what we're doing? Not happy with what we're doing. Certainly not going to be happy with our decision tonight, probably, but, frankly, we get a lot of input, not just in the emails that are in the packets, and we're taking in input, we're trying to do our best. So I appreciate those of you who step forward and run for the office and are here. So when it comes to my end of year, I'm really thankful for the time that you all have put into the community and for our town staff. Like you pointed out, I think we're very fortunate, not just for the wonderful community we live in, but for all the activism and it wouldn't be the same community if we didn't have all this activism. So, it's sometimes it feels like you get overwhelmed with all the activism, but that's what makes it such a vibrant and lovely community to live in. So I hope everybody enjoys time with their families, and see you on the 28th.
Esther, I haven't signed the warrants. Can you send those around?
So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
What was overwhelming was the package to prepare for this meeting. That was overwhelming.
That was a big package.
It was a big,
Oh,
I
God.
think I
I
counted
was going here
seven.
and I discovered there was something I didn't actually read. I got so
Thank
mesmerized.
you.
I can't get that time where I'm supposed to sign.
Oh. Thank you for.
Recording stopped.